stock.
Hi there. If anyone's got any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Yes. So we will start the first presentation in roughly a minute.
Given right now? I mean, we are not playing out a video, do we?
Yes.
No. So yeah. So Tim, you can already start sharing your slides.
Oh, I'm to do it live. I thought I'd submitted a video already. Okie dokie. That was me. My bad.
It's running like back to back.
I see. Oh, my bad. Hang on. Give me a moment. Gosh, where I put those down.
Or just run the video as a backup. Not yet. I think we can't hear you well, Krista, but it's just sharing the slides.
Okay, can you see that now?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
Just,
yeah, so my project is, as you can see, addressing game development challenges using industry best practices. Just to give you a bit of an overview on game development, it's a massive industry. It's the largest entertainment industry in the world. It's bigger than box office, music, and movies and music combined. And a third of humanity are gamers in one form or another. And the majority of studios number 5 or less, so it's actually little micro companies who are making these games. In New Zealand in particular, it has about a 40% annual growth rate, so it's one of the fastest growing tech sectors in New Zealand and also around the world. So there's been this thing called a global pandemic. I don't know if you're known. It's affected all of us. It's impacted society at every level, and it's often sort of negatively impacted a lot of different industries. However, in game development and games in particular have been a way for people to connect and socialize, even though they've been physically distanced apart. And so the World Health Organization did a bit of a turnaround and formed a partnership with a lot of major game studios to promote games as a healthy way to socialize in a time of uncertainty and isolation and mental health crisis that this pandemic has sort of caused. And so in terms of the social impact of games, there's a lot to be said positively about them. However, it's not all good news. Of the games that do go into production, actually only 20% of those are even finished. And 20% of these are the ones who actually hit the market, only 20% of them turn a profit or break even. That's about 4% overall. There's many reasons why this is, but according to the research, the core reason is related to people and the processes and practices and collaboration between teams not working out. One of the reasons why this is that video game development is not actually well understood, even by the industry themselves. They're a very secretive industry and often don't share notes. And so a lot of game developers don't actually have the knowledge required to do everything that a game needs. Game development is a marriage between software engineering and creative production and business and design. And so you can see here, just in terms of making the content, there's art, design, engineering, audio, narrative, to say nothing of these other disciplines that are needed to bring a game together. However, a lot of the knowledge of how these disciplines actually work and work together isn't actually known in research. And that's because there hasn't been a lot of industrial empirical research. There hasn't been as many case studies or surveys and things like that to actually learn about game development practice. And the research that has been done is often done in academic contexts that actually are not directly related to industry. And so these are two New Zealand games, Path of Exile and Bloons Tower Defense 6, that are New Zealand success stories, and we don't know a lot about the stories behind them that made them successful. Third problem, as I said, that there's many game development challenges. This was a state of the industry report where game developers reported on different challenges they were facing. Other than finding funding, the second major challenge is actually how to collaborate together. In New Zealand, we have this conference called Play by Play, where game developers come together and chat about issues affecting them. And this is, even here in New Zealand, the main challenges are in terms of project management and how to bring all these different disciplines together and working well. Is a bit like herding cats. Although a lot of studios say that they're agile and use frameworks like Scrum or Kanban to manage their projects, research has shown that this often is the case. They either adapt their processes or use different processes that they misattribute as being agile. And I did a survey of game studios in 2019 here in New Zealand. And through the 4 phases of game development, only about half of them actually use Scrum during all the phases of production. And so game developers don't have a common vocabulary. There doesn't seem to be a general method for making games. And so a lot of these challenges are because they're just using ad hoc methods at whatever works best at the time. And so both the industry and researchers have consistently been asking for a best practice framework that merges sort of best software engineering practices and principles and processes with that of creative production into a sort of cohesive whole. And so it kind of brings me to my research question, which is how can best software engineering and creative production practices be used to form a development model or framework which addresses these common multidisciplinary development challenges in the video game development industry. And so my project is sort of looking at these 5 problems. So the first thing we'll be looking at is trying to actually have a general game development model that actually looks at the different activities in the game development process during the different phases and understand what practices are being used in them. And that will be mainly through a systematic literature review. We're now currently conducting case studies with studios, so we have a more empirically based description of video game development. We're very lucky here in New Zealand. It's a much more open work culture, particularly towards academics, rather than it is overseas. So we actually have a unique opportunity to come visit these studios and work alongside them and find out what they're actually doing. And what we want to do with this model is to have a deep understanding that given a studio's context, the size of the studio, what platform they're making, what genre they're making for, and what practices and processes that they're using, what are the challenges that they're facing and why? And so we want to form a sort of relational mapping between studio sort of contexts and processes and the challenges that they're facing. We also want to answer the question, is game development actually even agile? What's the actual story? Is agile the solution? Is agile part of the problem? Do we need a different framework other than agile for game development? And that leads to sort of the best practice framework, where from everything we've learned, what are some common practices which are effective in the game development space that studios could use to help solve these endemic challenges that are causing so many projects to fail. In terms of where we are currently, in terms of the challenges that we've faced so far, obviously it's a big scope. It's rather ambitious. Game development is a lot more complicated than people think. It's certainly more complicated than I thought. And so sort of managing that scope and clearly breaking the problem down into manageable chunks has been a challenge. Trying to get case studies just in general is quite difficult, but in game development in particular has been is a challenge. And so we had an opportunity to do a case study with a studio who just started up from the very beginning of the project. And so we had to sort of pause the systematic literature review, well, with the planning of it, to start working the case study, which means making a protocol and doing research for that. So there's been a lot of context switching, which has been a bit of a challenge. And just in terms of the project logistics, in terms of meeting studios and organizing materials and things has been a challenge. Coming up with a proper methodology that can address this sort of frontier research space has also been a challenge. We're using the goal question metric along with Kitchenham's evidence-based software engineering and a mixed methods bicultural framework that was developed here in New Zealand to help triangulate research to get results that have methodological rigor and use data triangulation and addresses game development from the software engineering and a business perspective and creative production perspective. And a lot of investment's been done to increase the studio response rate to get to know the studios here in New Zealand so they will be responsive to our surveys and our interviews. In terms of the timeline, we've done a literature overview and we've built up relationships with about 10 of the major studios here in New Zealand, plus others. We've done the ICSSP publication, which you've just seen with is Agile enough? We're currently conducting the case studies. And after we've finished that, we'll complete the systematic literature review, perform the studio survey and interviews to determine the relational mapping, sort of make the model and sort of write up the thesis after that. Here are the contact details for the research team. All of us are based here at UC. I'm very blessed to have Miguel, Simon, and Stefan each bringing a whole different set of skills and knowledge. And so it's a multi-disciplinary, multi-department collaboration. So if you're interested in contacting us, these are our details. And for those who like to fact check, these are the quotes that I use for my slides. Yep, I think that's that.
Okay, thank you very much for this nice.
Yeah, sorry about that early mix-up. That's my bad. I wasn't aware.
No, absolutely. This was a really nice talk, actually. So I will turn to thank you for the presentation. Talk to the mentors. So we can start with if they have any questions, and then we can also go to questions from all audience. So actually we have first question. So before I ask some of my, so interesting project. Fabio says, he might have missed it, but could it be interesting to consider cross-contamination, meaning instead of looking at best practices from the dev industry to game development only, also consider the other way around too? And sorry if you mentioned that already.
So my understanding that is that in terms of the feedback, say, between software engineering and video game development, how there's a bit of cross-pollination and ability to generalize the results into other domains. Is that kind of my understanding of the question there? I think that's definitely the plan. Video game development is sort of it is software engineering, but it's also creative production, and yet it's neither of these. So, for example, in software engineering, you often have sort of hard functional requirements and sort of non-functional requirements like usability and things like that are sort of not an afterthought, but not the main priority. Where in game development, it's the other way around. We're creating an engaging experience that is all about usability and things like that. Means that the priorities are completely different. And so a lot of these elements of the game development haven't been researched. And so the semantics for requirements engineering and video game development is critically unresearched, and game developers don't even have a vocabulary to describe it. So the sort of user experience and those sorts of elements, in terms of researching those practices and what works in game development, certainly would be able to be applied in other areas where you're using interactive media. And also insights could be applied back into the software engineering space. That's the wonderful thing about video game development, is it's so multidisciplinary. It has something to say in engineering, it has something to say in science, it has something to say in sociology and in business. It's a very fascinating field in that regard.
Okay. Feel free to go, Christoph. We can't hear you, Christoph. I think. Is it only me or?
No, I can't hear him either. You're speaking very quietly. Maybe if you crank up your volume there, Christoph. Oh yeah, and your mic's about. You might want to lower your mic.
The mic. Maybe while he fixes it or he types it, I can ask one question. Sure. So I was wondering, actually, you are a very good, ideal position. You have many partners, industry partners on video games, which is really a great opportunity, I think. And you mentioned you wanted to make, or you are in the process of making case studies with them. And I was wondering if you can maybe talk a bit more about the nature and design of those case studies. For example, will you have access to the workflow of the teams, the various artifacts they work with? So so
I've been following Runson, the 2012 book on creating empirical case studies, and we're trying to understand all the contextual factors that are relevant for studios. So, for example, a studio's success factor, depending on the goals of the studio and the context they're in, their practices will be different towards those goals. So we're trying to capture that. And we're also using the goal question metric approach to try to understand what are the studio's goals and what are the concrete steps that they're doing to reach those. And so it's the design of the methodology allows for different forms of collecting data. So the studio I'm with right now, I have access to day-to-day. I'm going to observe them, but I'm also collecting things from their all the documents that they've been producing. They've got like a Slack channel, they've got a Jira board, lots of different sources of data. And the idea is that we want to triangulate between those different sources and those different perspectives to try and get a more truer approximation of their process, particularly because as we know, what people say they do and what they actually do, there can be a huge disconnect. And so that's part of the investigation. And so, there's a rich data source to look at in terms of what we're doing with the case studies, which is quite exciting.
Is it possible to hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we hear you good.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay. Always worked before? Okay. I guess we can also take the discussion now in the backstage then onwards, right? Because the next talk is scheduled for now.
Yes, I think there's going to be a little link that's about to pop up.
Maybe we can have time for one